Welcome to Season 3 of Les Bons Mots, a podcast about language learning by ACA, a language training school based in Quebec, Canada. This podcast is designed for people who are learning languages, and each episode covers a different topic connected to language learning to help you on your language learning journey. For those of you who don't know ACA, we give ESL and FSL training to students across the country. We do large-scale training with a number of companies and government departments at the provincial and federal level, as well as have group and private classes available to the general public and to youth learners. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Britta Potion Reader. I've been teaching English as a second language for over 10 years, and I'm also learning French and Spanish. Language is my passion. We're so excited to have you with us on Les Bons Mots for our third season. This season, we're excited to welcome some of our language learners to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by my guest, David Thibodeau. David is a radio producer at CBC Radio-Canada, and he lives and works in Vancouver, Canada. We're going to be talking about living in a second language environment, a topic that's relevant to anyone who's lived in a new language environment or who may be working more in a second language. For our listeners outside of Canada, CBC is our national public broadcaster, called the Canadian Broadcast Corporation in English and Radio-Canada in French. Let's get started. David, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us as our first guest of season 3 and our first language learner guest.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Today, we're going to talk about a subject you know very well, the experience of living in a new language environment or being immersed in your second language. Maybe we can start by talking about the big move you made. Where did you move and why?
So, yes, I moved from Gatineau in Quebec here in Vancouver, British Columbia. We did that, yes, last July, on July 2020, actually. Is it? Yeah, 2020. And so it's been just a year. We are here in Vancouver with my wife, Virginie, and my two kids, Lou and Henri. They were 12 and 10 when we moved. Did that for the job. Actually, I have a job that can permit me those kind of things. I mean, Radio Canada have a radio station in every province, every territories in Canada. So I'm feeling pretty happy to just have the opportunity to do that. So moving from Gatineau, Ottawa area to here in Vancouver. So we did that for the job and for the family experience too.
It's such a great advantage of working with a national employer, one that allows you that kind of mobility and opportunities. Gatineau to Vancouver is a huge change. What was the initial experience of living in a new language environment like?
Oh my God. Yeah, I was saying that I'm feeling lucky to experience that kind of things. I mean, living in Ottawa, Gatineau, you can speak English in Ottawa, you can speak English in Gatineau too, but we were speaking mostly French, even in Ottawa, which we believe is bilingual capital of the Canada. So when we moved here in Vancouver, we knew that we couldn't have the same French life that we had in Gatineau in Ottawa. But though we have the French school, there is a French environment at the office. I mean, there's a lot of French colleague here in Vancouver. And also, there's a lot of people speaking French here in Vancouver. Sometimes they are tourists, but there's a lot of. I mean, we say that there's like 60,000 or 65,000 people speaking French in all British Columbia and Yukon, because with the radio station we are doing broadcast for British Columbia and Yukon. So just to come back to your question, the first thing we experiment here, it was like Virginie and I had correct English, we could say, since high school, but we never practiced except when we traveled with family and later by ourselves. So when we moved in Vancouver, we knew that we were okay to speak English with people. We knew that we could understand everything that we heard, but we were not at ease with the small talk or meeting people or even work efficiently in English.
And what about for your kids? What was the change like for them?
They were not speaking one word of English, or or maybe just the words they learned in their video games. And surprisingly, they had in Gatineau, their best friend were bilingual. So sometimes they tried to speak English with them, but with no success. So when they moved here in Vancouver, at first they were like, "Oh my God, we are missing French. People are always speaking English. I don't understand everything and all that." I remember when we tried to make them watch movies in English, and especially my youngest one were like, "Oh no, I don't want to watch a movie in English," and we were like, well, it's the only way you'll learn. I mean, it's one of the best way to learn English. You have to do that, Henry. And now 1 year later, he's looking at Japanese anime with English subtitles. Well, he did a lot. He did a lot of work, even if you don't know that, because it comes like naturally for the kids, better than us. Now they are ordering their food in a restaurant, by example, and we're looking at them saying, "Wow, you're speaking English, and your English is better than us, for the moment."
It can be a little bit frustrating sometimes for those of us who are learning language as adults when we see the ease and speed that children seem to and teenagers seem to pick it up. But we feel maybe a little bit jealous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, yes, but it's wonderful to see them having some interactions in English with people, and sometimes joking with the waitress at the restaurant, and we're like, "Oh, okay, you speak English and you do jokes in English." My older one is playing hockey with a bunch of kids that are only speaking English. And I was like, how can you communicate with them on the ice and outside the rink? And it was like, that the hockey vocabulary is pretty much the same in French and English. I mean, skate, shoot, check, back check, forecheck, line change. I mean, he understood everything. But I was seeing him so much at ease on ice, joking with the other kids, and teammates are being so nice with him. They were trying to learn some word of French, and so it's wonderful to see them having that experience right now. And I don't know if they they know what they are doing right now, but we can say as parents that 1 year after they moved here in Vancouver, their English is better than ever.
That's fantastic. It must be really rewarding to see that progress and feel that pride in your kids for sure, especially because it's a big change. So that's great.
Y- it's a big change, and it's like a big English lessons for them without them knowing they are learning. So that's a good thing. And the other thing is that, and we'll talk about it later, about the confidence we have, or the non-confidence we have sometimes, Virginie and I, when we speak English. But the kids don't worry so much with that confidence or not. They are just speaking English, and when they don't know the word, they say it in French, and no matter what, they'll understand, and there's no problem with that. And also they have like another personality when they speak another language, when they speak English. So it's funny to observe that, to see that as parents when they play video games online with people from around the world, and suddenly they are speaking English, and we're like, oh my God, okay, you're another person. It's like they have another personality, that the tone of the voice is changing, the vocabulary is not the same, but we can hear that they are learning new words every week, and they are not just video games words. I mean, they are learning other words, just chatting with people around the world speaking English. Yeah.
When you speak English, do you feel like you have a different personality or a different aspect of your personality that comes out?
That's an excellent question, and I'd answer yes. Yes. And sometimes that is very frustrating, because Virginie and I, we love French. French is the heart of our job when you're working in the media. It's very important you choose the right words always. You want to be the more precise you can be. And also, we have great sense of humor, and we are very quick in French to answer people and all that. And English, it could be very frustrating that you can't be that fast. You can't answer so quickly. So sometimes it's like, oh, I can't be the same with people. So it's like I'm discovering a new me, or we are discovering new us. That's very strange. That's very strange. So, but yeah, I don't know if other people learning a new language are living the same thing. Yeah, I would be excited to know that.
I think you're not alone. I know for myself, with learning French in such an intense way since I moved to Montreal, it's the same thing. We have different aspects of our personality that come out with the different proficiency. I feel like English Britta is one person, French Britta is maybe a little bit more deferential. She's waits a little bit longer, thinks a little bit more about what she's going to say. Britta, who speaks Spanish, is kind of crazy. She's really, really animated, even more than English speaking Britta. So I don't think you're alone in this, that's for sure.
It's very strange, but I mean, it's very interesting also, because it's cool to observe us and trying to understand what we are trying to say, what we are trying to do in the other language. So yeah, it's a pretty cool experience right now so far.
Language is the medium through which we express ourselves to the world. So when we learn a language, it's not the same as learning biology, learning mathematics. We're really learning a mode of being ourselves in a different way.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the when I'm speaking French, I use a lot of words. I I use a lot of words, and in English, most of the time, I mean, I'm saying myself, Keep it simple, David. Keep it simple, David. Please do short sentences. Please." It's interesting because when I'm working with English colleagues that speak French, sometimes I would ask them to do a short piece on radio, and they're like, "Oh, my French is not really good." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 your French is really good. You're going to do that on air with us on the French show." And then the English speaking journalists come and they speak French on air with us, and all the sentences are very short. There's a lot of punch. It's like when we are saying that it's difficult to do rock song in French if you're doing some lyrics for an English rock song. It's like it sounds better in English. So when English speaking journalists come in on air to do a French piece, it's very short, very short sentences, and it gives rhythm to their piece.
Interesting. Yeah, you have a real aesthetic appreciation, I think, for language and the patterns of the language and sort of the flow and the different kinds of tempo we get from English, from French.
Yeah, it's all about rhythm, and when you're in a discussion with someone like we're doing right now, it's like dancing with someone. So yeah, so it's about rhythm. It's about when doing radio. It's about the same thing. I'm always saying to my host, you're dancing with the guest right now. You're dancing with it, and you don't want to, you don't want to step on the foot of your guest. So it's about the same thing when we're speaking in English with someone else. It's like, oh, am I overlapping right now? Am I saying the right words at the right moment? So we are overthinking most of the time all the discussion we have in English, and sometimes that could be a problem. Yeah.
Just to bring it back a little bit to what you were saying before about your transition, it sounds like something that sort of smoothed the transition for you is that you have some continued exposure to French at work for you and for Virginie and for your kids through their French language school. And you also have exposure to English, obviously, in a much bigger way than what you had in Gatineau and Ottawa. So I noticed for myself, and I imagine probably for you, it's the same, that having some period of immersion, even when it's a relatively short one, can really give us a boost in our language skills. And you mentioned seeing the change in your sons. For you, since you moved to Vancouver, how have you improved your language skills?
Well, for sure, we feel we are using English more and more. Maybe because we are hanging out more. We came here in a pandemic moment, so we haven't get some chance to meet new people. So having maybe less chance of speaking English, but we feel a bit more confident speaking English right now. But we know that the best way to improve is to practice. We know that we have to speak, we have to speak English. But the problem is that we're not obliged to do that here. We can have a French life pretty easily because yeah, you mentioned it. My kids are going to French school. I'm working in a French and with French colleagues. Well, I know I can't order maybe at the restaurant in French. Well, I say that, and I know I can in some places. So we have to speak English, and we have to speak English, and we are trying to do it every day. So it's like for the kids, we feel that the kids don't practice much, but they are improving faster, as I said, than us just by listening to people around. And so so we feel that we improved our English. We know that it's going to be better next year and again and again and again. So as long as we'll stay here in Vancouver, we know we'll improve our English, and we have some strategy to do that. We have to meet new people. We have to get some English classes. We have to go ahead and meet some new English colleagues and put ourselves in situation where we don't have any choice to speak in English. So this is our everyday challenge, I'd say.
Well, you talked a little bit just a few moments ago about your need to sort of put yourself into situations where you're forced to use English. And this really is tied a lot to the idea of confidence and the confidence to use your language. And I know that this has been a key aspect of your language learning journey. So, what for you is the connection between confidence and language learning? How do these two come together?
uh, it's cliche, Britta, but it's something like jump and the net will appear. I had a teacher who used to tell me that that means that you just have to go, just have to speak English, and you hope that everything that you would say will be well understood. Because sometimes I don't have the right words, well, very often, and then I'm using a French word. I mean, I'm like, okay, there's one chance out of three that that's the same word in English and in French, please. And there's two chance out of three that he will understand anyway what I'm saying. So and people here are very nice with other people trying to learn English, because I mean, I think it's half of the population here in Vancouver that don't have English as a mother language or first language. So they are pretty patient, would say. They are yeah, they are very understanding what we are trying to say. So yeah, but people are very nice. Sometimes I'm like, I can't believe they don't know that I come from Quebec. I mean, my accent is really is so big, and they're like, after 5 or 10 minutes, so where are you from? I mean, well, you can't guess I'm from Quebec. I mean, you can't hear it. That's okay, because when I'm not thinking too much about the exact words, as I said, those are the moments where I can succeed. Those are the moments where I have the most pleasant time having a conversation with English speaking person. And as I said, Virginie and I love French so much, so we are good at it. It's part of our job. We are using a large vocabulary that is as precise as possible, and it's a value for us. So when we speak English, we tend to want to do the same. So when we speak English, we know that we don't have the same vocabulary, so we can't hope having the same fluidity and quickness in our answer.
It just takes time and practice. Unfortunately, we don't live in the matrix world where we could just plug ourselves in and download a new language. I'm sure many of us really wish we could do that and just, skip over this whole acquisition period, but sadly not a reality
No, no,
yet.
and yeah, you mentioned it earlier, but it's more difficult when you're like 40 years old, having to try a new language that, well, we can see with our kids, they are learning pretty fast, and they are not on the same track that we are, for sure.
When you've had these conversations, when you've stepped out of your comfort zone and you've engaged in conversations, even though there's those feelings of uncertainty in the moment, afterwards, do you find that it helps your confidence to have had those
Yeah,
experiences?
for sure. For sure. Sometimes I finish the conversation and it lasts like 10 minutes, and I'm I'm completely wasted after that. But I'm home, and I'm saying, "Whoa, you know what? You spoke just like 10 minutes with your neighbor, and he understood everything. So you were right. That it was great, perfect. Go again." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm totally wasted. I'm gonna take a break, and I'm gonna do it another time."
I think a lot of language learners can relate to this. I know that certainly I can relate exactly to your experience, but obviously going the other way when I'm speaking with people in French and wanting to make sure I'm clear. And also that sort of moment of mentally high-fiving myself after having a successful conversation in French. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, did it.
Yeah, and that's it's a big topic, but and I'm sure you addressed that with the podcast before, but the linguistic insecurity thing is it's real. I mean, we are working with a lot of francophiles here, people that are loving French but don't speak it on a daily way, and they are like, I don't want to give some interview on a French program. My French is not good enough, and we're like, you know what, your French is good enough. So as I'm saying that to an English guest, I can relate to that. I can say, you could have the same words for you if you were having an interview in English on CBC. You could say to yourself, yeah, I'm good enough. I'm going to do my best. I know they are going to understand what I have to say, and that's the main point. That's the main point of communication. So if I start with that, I'm more confident to have those discussions. Yeah.
You've got such a unique perspective because you've seen it both ways. And as you say, you have those words that I think any of us can use to help ourselves let go of that inner perfectionist, that inner critic who says to
Mhm.
us, oh, well, your French isn't as good as your English, or your English isn't as good as your French, or your Spanish isn't as good as your Italian, or whatever the case may be. Silencing that inner voice can be a challenge.
Oh, it is a challenge because it depends of what you want to do with your second language. I mean, my goal is to one day do the same job in English that I'm doing in French. So I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do that next year or in 2 years or even in 3 years. But I know one day I'll be okay with that. I'll be able to do that, and I'll be in good position to do the same thing in English. But if it's just to meet new people, if it's just to understand the environment in which you are, sometimes it will impact the way you learn English, or the way you learn your second language. So I think you have to ask yourself what's the main point with learning a new language, and after that, maybe you'll look at it in with another point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other tips or tricks or things that improved your confidence that you want to share with our listeners?
There is no magic tricks. I mean, you have to watch, you have to listen, you have to hear, you have to look, you have to smell the environment in which you are. I mean, if and that's the spirit of the immersion that we are doing right now. I mean, if you're always hearing English, it's like you're catching some words, catching the small talk, you're catching all those little words that makes a difference when you're speaking in your other language. So I think that's the first rule. And after that, I mean, you have to practice. You have to practice. One of the tricks I have, which is something very basic, but it's to read out loud. And even when you are outside with people and you're looking the window of a shop and just looking at what they are selling and telling loud what you're reading, yeah, sometimes it's really weird, but it's the best way to practice. I mean, and sometimes people around are just helping you. People are so nice. You have to tell you that people around are so nice, and they are pleased to help you with your second language. So that's what I repeat to my kids. People around are nice, so they will try to help you. So if you hesitate, please ask questions, and you'll get the answer from nice people.
It's true. We have to have a little bit of faith in human nature. 99 point something, 9%
Yeah.
of people are going to be generally happy to communicate and try to understand. And that's a really good reminder.
Yeah, that's what we are doing when we were in Quebec, by example. It was the same thing. If
Mhm.
I was meeting someone, an English speaking person, trying to speak French with me, and trying to have the perfect word, and sometimes I was like, say the word in English, and that's okay, and continue, I'll understand. I appreciate the effort of trying to learn a new language, and trying to learn the language that is speaking the place you are. Yeah.
So you're in a place now where you've been in Vancouver for just over a year. Looking back, is there anything that you would have done to prepare for your move or that you would advise other people to do if they're going to experience a similar kind of transition?
I would probably began English efforts before I came here in Vancouver. I mean, I learned English in high school. I didn't have so many occasions to practice English because I was in a French speaking city. There were no one around speaking English really. So the only occasions we have, it was like when we were having some holidays in USA, or some trips around. So when I was in Ottawa, Gatineau, maybe I didn't speak English enough. Well, I used to think that my English was really great for the place where I was living. So I didn't expect that one day I would move in Vancouver. And then when we moved here, I was like, okay, there's a lot of people speaking English right here, and I'm gonna have to use it to get some appointments at the dentist, or to do my grocery, to ask computer repair. So when I know I have something like that to do, when I know I have, I don't know, like a conversation I have to do with an English speaking colleague, now I practice before, or I'm writing down some words, some keywords that I'll use in those conversations. So maybe it's time, if you plan to move in another country, to get those keywords.
To do a little bit of investment, if possible,
Yeah,
before you move.
yeah.
Yeah,
If you
definitely.
got time to do so, yeah.
But I love the suggestion that you just gave, which is sort of preparing for the situations you're going to face. I do exactly the same thing in French. Think a little bit about the vocabulary I'm going to use, what questions am I going to ask, and try to formulate those a little bit before so that I can have a bit more ease when I'm actually in the situation instead of feeling that on the spot feeling.
Yes, it's like you've been practicing, so it's like for everything. It's like sports. I mean, if you want to perform to be, I don't know, a good runner, well, you have to run. So it's the same thing. You have to run before doing the 10K or the marathon. So it's the same thing right now. So I think for the same parallel, I'm doing right now a marathon. So maybe maybe I should have practiced a bit. I should have run before that. Yeah.
Again, I really appreciate that advice. So, is there any other advice that you would give to someone who is going to be using their second language more? Again, either they're preparing for a move or perhaps their company's expanding. They're going to have contact with clients who are using the second language. They're going to just be asked to do a little bit more in that. What would you recommend, or what advice would you give?
It's good to speak English with people around you, but sometimes what I can observe right now, it's like I'm speaking English with English colleagues at CBC. So I'm always talking about the job. I'm always talking about radio. I'm always talking about media. So I'm always in the same lexical fields. So it's always the same vocabulary. If I want to learn new words, I feel that I have to meet people outside of my job, or outside of my friend circle. So that way, maybe it's a good trick for everyone to explore different lexical fields and enlarge your vocabulary. So um, that's the trick I tried. I'm trying to to experiment right now.
Yeah, it's true. We do often get stuck in a linguistic rut when we're talking to the same people about the same kinds of topics regularly. What role do you think language classes have in developing those skills?
Well, I learned a lot. I mean, and we were talking about confidence. I mean, that's one of the main point I developed with the English lessons. But most of that, sometimes it's like an expression, a word that you mentioned, that your teacher mentioned, and it's like you didn't give so much attention at that word first, and the day after you're using it in the street, just and you're like, oh, okay, I learned that in the English lessons. Also, well, it was a pandemic year, so I didn't get a lot of chances to speak English with people around. So the English lessons was like, okay, for the next hour, hour and a half, you have to speak English. But it was like, keep it up after that. That is an English lesson, but maybe tomorrow and the day after you'll have to do the same thing, but in real, not with your teacher. So the English lesson gave me that, and it gave me the basics of the verbs, Brita. It's really tough to use all those verbs, and I mean, I know it's difficult in French, but in English, well, it's a challenge for me. It's still a challenge for me, even after the lesson. Sorry.
I wouldn't ever expect anyone to be a master of every English verb tense after 30 hours of instruction. I think that that's not a realistic expectation for anybody, no matter what language you're learning, unless you are learning, I don't know, a language that has only two verb tenses, but English is not that
Uh,
language. French is not that language.
oh no, 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 no! I can confirm that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing that's great about what you're saying is that we can see how there's harmony or synergy between formal learning situations and informal learning situations, right? Maybe we get a few tools in the formal learning and then we apply them in our informal learning situations. I don't know. Am I
Yes.
summarizing it well for you?
Yeah. 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 That's really true. And well, basically the English lesson is a discussion with your teacher. So um well, it's important all you are learning in that formal way. But I mean, I think I learned pretty much just listening to you talking to me. So sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, you can say that. Oh yeah, you can say that word. Oh, okay, you can say those words like this. So yeah, after that, when you're going outside, you're really listening to the people, maybe with much more attention, I'd say.
And that attentiveness is a great tip for anybody who's taking language class is when you hear those words or that phrase or when your teacher says something you're not sure about, don't be shy and ask. Language teachers love questions. That's why we're teachers. Don't be shy to ask about it. And you can build those skills of natural speech that maybe we don't always get from a book, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when you are in an English lesson, you want to perform, you want to be good. So it's like your brain is going very fast, but you can't speak that fast. So well, I don't know, it's very exhausting at the end. It's like well, your brain is completely kaput, but after that you can. But, but it's like really tough to compute that way. It's like it goes really fast in the brain, but so slow in the mouth. So we have to calibrate that evenly.
It's true, and I think too, whenever we're taking classes, we always have to remember that once is not enough. You know,
No.
you were talking about verb tenses. I know that I just in my French classes recently had my third pass at the subjunctive, and I finally feel like I'm starting to get a grip on the subjunctive in French. But then, when I'm actually in a conversation and I have to apply it, I'm like, oh, darn it, what is the termination for that verb? It's an irregular form and je fais, no, je fasse. Yes, yes. It takes a few passes. And each time we come back to a topic, we kind of grab a little bit more from it.
Yes, yes, and this is the way you improve. I mean, this is I think the only way to get better. Yeah.
What do you think is next for you on your language learning path or your journey? What's the next challenge that you've set for yourself? You've maybe alluded to this.
You know, as I work in the news mainly, it's like it's really hard to get rid of old habits of consuming French media, and for sure I'm still reading in French. I'm still watching shows in French, and well, I would like to do it in English most of the time. So maybe just recalibrate that ratio of French and English media consuming. So s- maybe that's the next step. And one of the other step would be to meet new people from outside of the job or friend circle. So to as I said earlier, learn new words, learn new lexical fields, and learn new experiences too, human experiences.
That's the pleasure of using a language, is the communication that we have with other people and the experiences we have with them.
For sure, yeah.
Well, I have no doubt that, with all of your different approaches that you've got to language learning, that you're going to continue improving your English skills in the next months. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh yeah, please let's do the podcast in a couple of years, please. Yeah, just to know, just to see how much I improved. Yeah, please.
Perfect. See you in season 6 for part 2.
Yeah, cool.
David, you were just mentioning how you're engaging more with English media to learn more vocabulary and a little bit more of those sort of natural pieces of the language that we get from getting a lot of input in English. And this makes me think about a phrasal verb that we can use in this situation as language learners: to pick something up. So, like lots of phrasal verbs in English, there is more than one definition, but could you tell us what the phrasal verb pick something up means in connection with learning?
Well, that would mean to learn something like language or other new skill by practicing it rather than by being taught it. I mean, it's if I'm speaking with people in my neighborhood in English, it's like I'm picking up English instead of what I'm doing in the English lesson with you, by example.
Great example. So it's a kind of informal learning.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, we could say that when you spend time in another country, you pick up the language quickly. Or he picked up some Spanish when he was traveling in Mexico.
Oh, this is a great phrasal verb for both of us, David, as both of us are in the process of picking up new
Yeah.
vocabulary, picking up new structures as we're going about our lives in our second language.
Yes.
And media is such a great suggestion for a way to sort of continue to pick up those structures and those vocabulary and get exposed to different kinds of language.
Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna do after the podcast. I'm gonna picking up English in the English media. After that, I'm gonna go on the CBC website. I'm gonna go on the New York Times website. I'm gonna learn new words, new English words. I'm gonna pick it up.
Fantastic. David, thank you so much for joining me on the episode today and for your generosity in sharing your experience with our listeners, because I know you and I were not the only ones alone in these kind of environments where we're immersed. It's been just a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. It was nice, and remember, Britta, phone me back in a couple of years. I'll do that again, and my English will be better. I promise. And you know what? It's going to be the same for everybody here listening and learning a new language.
Oh, that's such a great way to close things. Thank you so much, David. Again, it was just an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best as you continue your language learning journey.
Thank you, Britta. Take care.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Les Bons Mots. Visit us on our website at lesbonsmots.ca. We have a lot of great language learning videos and content on our blog as well, where we post regularly about news, culture, and language learning. Do you have any questions or suggestions? We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at lesbonsmots@lesateliers.ca or find us on Facebook and Instagram at lesateliers.ca. Reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about our language training programs, or if you want to talk about ways to improve your skills. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts to help other language learners find us. Thanks again, and happy practicing.